The island of St. Aldrich lies 20 miles off the coast of Cornwall, a jagged tooth of rock barely large enough for its single village, its lighthouse, and the cemetery that has outgrown both. The lighthouse stands on the western headland, a white tower 80 feet tall, its lantern room crowned by a copper dome green with age. For 143 years it burned without interruption, until the night of November 12, 1981, when the light simply went out. No storm that evening, no fog thick enough to smother the beam. The keeper on duty, Elias Crow, was found the next morning sitting at the bottom of the spiral stair, staring upward, mouth open in a silent scream. His logbook entry for that final watch read only 4 words, written in a hand that shook so violently the ink bled through 3 pages. The light saw me first. After that night, the lighthouse was automated. A committee from Trinity House installed electric lamps, photoelectric cells, and a backup generator. The lantern room was sealed. The village, fewer than 90 souls now, agreed never to speak of Elias Crow again. Children were told the old light had been replaced because it was too expensive to maintain a human keeper. The truth, whispered only among the oldest fishermen, was simpler. The lighthouse no longer needed a man. It had become something else. 92 years later, in the autumn of 2023, a woman named Mara Vale arrived on the morning supply boat. She was 31, pale from too many months indoors, carrying a single duffel bag and a hard-sided case marked fragile audio equipment. Her hair was cropped short, the color of wet slate. Her eyes were the gray of winter sea. She told the harbormaster she was a sound artist working on a commission for the British Library Sound Archive. Field recordings of Britain's last manned lighthouses. St. Aldrich had been chosen because its original optic, still intact behind the modern lamps, was one of the few remaining Fresnel lenses of its type. The harbormaster, a man named Tom Trenwith whose family had fished these waters for 6 generations, looked at her for a long moment before speaking. "You'll be wanting the keeper's cottage, then? I was told it's still habitable." "It's habitable," he said. "Whether it's fit for living is another matter." He gave her the key anyway, a long iron thing with a loop shaped like a tiny anchor, and pointed her up the path that wound between granite cottages toward the headland. The keeper's cottage stood 50 yards below the tower, a low stone building with a slate roof and windows that had once looked straight out to the Atlantic. Inside smelled of salt and old varnish. The walls were papered in faded blue stripes. A wood-burning range still squatted in the corner, cold but clean. On the mantelpiece sat a brass oil lamp, its wick blackened, its chimney cracked. Mara set her equipment on the kitchen table. A stereo recorder, 2 large diaphragm condenser microphones, a contact mic for vibrations, hydrophones she rarely used inland, spare batteries, and a field notebook already half-filled with technical notes. She had come to capture the sound of isolation, the low moan of wind around the tower, the metallic creak of the lantern room in high weather, the slap of waves 300 feet below. She had 3 weeks before the next supply boat. Plenty of time. She began that afternoon. She climbed the 172 iron steps to the lantern room. The modern electric lamp rotated slowly behind thick glass, throwing its beam in a flat white circle across the sea. The original Fresnel lens, prisms like frozen rain, stood dark and silent beside it, a crystal cathedral 20 feet tall. Mara placed a boundary microphone on the floor grating and another against the lens frame. She hit record. Wind sighed through the ventilation cowls. Metal ticked as it cooled. Far below, waves broke against the rocks in irregular heartbeats. Then something else. A soft, rhythmic tapping. Not mechanical, not wind. It came from inside the lens itself, as though fingernails were drumming gently on the inside of the glass prisms. She stopped the recording, listened back. The tapping was there, clear, deliberate, almost patient. She left the microphones running overnight. In the morning, the batteries were dead. Every one. The recorder's screen showed 47 minutes of blank time-stamped silence. Then a sudden burst of audio at 3:17 a.m. Her own breathing, amplified, echoing inside a vast empty space, followed by a single word spoken in a voice that sounded like hers but slower, deeper, older. Mara. She told herself it was crosstalk from a marine radio, interference from the automatic beacon. She changed batteries, recalibrated levels, climbed back up, and tried again. This time she stayed in the lantern room after dark. She sat on the iron grating with her back against the lens pedestal, headphones on, gain low. The electric lamp swept overhead every 10 seconds, bleaching the room white, then plunging it into shadow. Outside, the sea spoke in low, continuous sentences. At 2:40 a.m., the tapping returned. It moved, slowly circling the lens from the inside, as though someone were walking a slow circuit around the prisms, tapping each one in turn. Mara whispered into the handheld recorder, "Possible structural resonance, or animal activity. Rats, perhaps." The tapping stopped. Then it answered 3 deliberate knocks directly in front of her. She stood up so quickly she knocked over a microphone stand. The clatter echoed for far too long. She descended the stairs without retrieving her gear. In the cottage, she locked the door, though she knew no lock on St. Aldrich had ever kept anything out that truly wanted to enter. She did not sleep. At dawn, she went to the village pub, the Lantern's Rest, for coffee and information. The landlady, Mrs. Polwheel, poured black coffee without asking if she took milk. "You're the sound lady," she said. "That's right. Been up the light yet?" "Last night. And the night before." Mrs. Polwheel wiped the bar with a cloth that had seen better decades. "Elias Crow was my great-uncle. He kept that light for 32 years without a single night off. Then one evening he didn't come down for supper. We found him the next morning at the bottom of the stair, looking up like he'd seen God himself. Or the other fellow." She set the coffee down. "He left a note in his log. Said the light had turned around. Said it was watching him instead of the other way round." Mara sipped the coffee. It was bitter and scalding. "Do you believe that?" "I believe he believed it," Mrs. Polwheel said. "And I believe the light hasn't been the same since. You leave your machines up there long enough, they'll start talking back. They always do." Mara returned to the cottage and listened to the overnight recording. Beneath the wind and the waves was a low, continuous murmur. Not words exactly, shapes of words. Her name repeated in different timbres, soft, then sharp, then pleading, then calm. It sounded like a choir learning a new hymn. She decided to go higher. The next night, she carried only the small handheld recorder and a contact microphone. She taped the contact mic directly to the brass frame of the Fresnel lens, the part that had once held oil lamps before electricity came. She sat cross-legged on the grating and waited. At 3:17 a.m., the lens began to hum. Not mechanically, not electrically. A deep, bone-resonant tone that rose through the iron floor into her spine. The contact mic captured it perfectly, clean, pure, terrifying. Then the voice came, not from the lens, from inside her headphones, from inside her skull. "Mara Vale, you came to listen. Now you must answer." She tore the headphones off. The voice continued, quieter but unmistakable, issuing from the tiny speakers dangling around her neck. "We have been silent a long time. The light was our eye. Elias closed it. You have opened it again." She scrambled backward until her shoulders hit the glass. The electric lamp swept past, illuminating the room in stark white flashes. Nothing moved. No one stood there, but the lens was warm. She felt it through her gloves, warm as skin. She fled down the stairs, taking them 2 at a time, stumbling at the bottom. She burst out into the cold night air and ran the 50 yards to the cottage. Inside, she bolted the door, shoved a chair under the handle, and sat on the floor with her back against the range. The recorder lay on the table where she had dropped it. The red record light still blinked. She reached over and pressed stop, then play. Her own breathing filled the room, ragged, terrified. Then the voice again, patient, almost kind. "You cannot leave until the debt is paid. Elias promised us a watcher. He failed. You will not." She deleted the file. The recorder beeped an error. The file would not delete. She removed the SD card, snapped it in half, threw the pieces into the range, and lit the fire. The next morning, the SD card lay on the kitchen table, whole again. She stopped sleeping in the cottage. She moved into the lantern room itself, bringing a sleeping bag, a thermos, and the last of her batteries. If she could not escape the sound, she would immerse in it, document it, prove it was nothing more than infrasound, standing waves, psychological suggestion. She recorded for 16 hours straight. The lens spoke continuously now, not in sentences but in impressions, memories that were not hers. She saw Elias Crow climbing the stair in 1981, lantern in hand, oil sloshing. She felt the moment he looked up and realized the light was looking down. She tasted the salt on his lips as he screamed without sound. She saw herself arriving on the supply boat, duffel bag in hand, eyes scanning the tower like a predator assessing prey. She heard her mother's voice, dead 12 years, telling her to come home before the weather turned. None of it was real. None of it was false. On the 7th night, she stopped fighting. She sat before the lens, palms flat against the warm brass, and spoke aloud for the first time since the voice had named her. "What do you want?" The lens answered instantly. "A keeper. I'm not a keeper. I'm a visitor. You are here. That is enough. I'll leave when the boat comes. The boat will not come until the debt is paid." She laughed once, a dry crack sound. "What debt?" "The light must see. Always." Elias turned away. The sea took 3 boats that winter because no one watched. 31 souls. You will watch in his place. I'm not staying. You already have. She looked around the lantern room. The electric lamp had stopped rotating. Its beam was fixed, pointing straight inland, toward the village, toward the cemetery, toward the cottages where lights still burned in a few windows. She tried the door to the gallery outside. Locked. From the inside, she pounded on the glass. No one answered. She returned to the lens and pressed her forehead against it. "Show me how to leave." The lens warmed further. Images flickered across the prisms, not reflections, but scenes playing on the inside of the glass like film projected from within. She saw the supply boat approaching the jetty, saw Tom Trenwith waving from the wheelhouse, saw herself standing on the quay, duffel bag at her feet, ready to board. Then the image shifted. She saw herself still in the lantern room. Weeks later, months, years, thin, unshaven, eyes sunken, still recording. The boat never reached the jetty. It turned back, shrouded in sudden fog. "You choose," the voice said. "Watch and live. Turn away, and the sea takes what it is owed." Mara sat down. She picked up the recorder, her last one, the small handheld, and pressed record. "This is Maravale, St. Aldrich Lighthouse. Keeper's log, day 8. I am staying. The light requires a watcher. I will watch." She placed the recorder on the grating. She sat facing the lens. Outside, the electric lamp began to rotate again. Slowly, deliberately, sweeping its beam across the black water. The village lights flickered once, then steadied. In the morning, the supply boat arrived as scheduled. Tom Trenwith stepped onto the jetty and looked up at the tower. The beam was turning normally. Everything appeared in order. He asked Mrs. Polwheel if the sound lady had come down. "She never left," Mrs. Polwheel said. "But the light's burning steady. That's what matters." No one climbed the tower that day or the next. Occasionally, on calm nights, fishermen passing below the headland would hear a woman's voice, low, calm, precise, reading from a logbook that no longer existed. She spoke of weather, of shipping lanes, of the stars. She never mentioned her name. She never mentioned leaving. The lighthouse kept its watch, and the sea stayed quiet.